President Bola Tinubu returns to the country today but lands in Lagos after a France and London trip. He's back to a cheering welcome from supporters and Lagos residents. And the European Union's Election Observation Mission Group has come out with its post-mortem of the 2023 election. They've given 6 areas of concern that Nigeria needs to look into in fixing some of the loopholes identified in the election. Hello everyone, welcome to the program. This is Politics Today, live on Channels Television. I'm Sean Okimalo in Abuja. We begin tonight from Lagos, where a few minutes ago, President Bola Tinubu landed in Lagos at the international wing of the airport. He landed to the warm embrace and welcome of the Lagos governor and his deputy, alongside members of the Governor's Advisory Council in Lagos and some other party leaders, as well as some citizens and residents of Lagos who trooped to the airport to welcome the president, who has being out of the country, first to France for a world leaders meeting, and then he went to London for a private visit in London. Just arrived the country today. He left France on Friday. After that meeting, was expected to return to Nigeria on Saturday, but he said he was going to London on a private visit. All right, then. We shall be talking about a few issues tonight on what the European Union saw in our elections. They've come out with 6 areas that Nigeria needs to deal with. We'll be looking at the EU's grouse with the manner in which the election was conducted and perhaps the way forward for Nigeria. But also we'll be looking at the Tinubu's presidency. What is in it for Nigeria going forward? What do we need to look at? But there are cases in court. The Presidential Election Tribunal is there in court. I mean, as that goes on, we're looking at the issues of governance. What are Nigerians to be expected? The removal of subsidy, the possibility of electricity, hike in price of electricity tariff. These are issues that Nigerians will be battling with in the coming days. But does the Tinubu government have an answer to all of these issues? Plus the politics in Nigeria. We'll be looking at all of that tonight. So stick around with me. First, we need to check out your political roundup stories.
The Lagos State Governorship Election Petition Tribunal has admitted in evidence a West African Examination Council certificate said to have been presented by the institution to Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu in 1981. The certificate was tendered before the tribunal by an official of WAEC, contrary to claims by the People's Democratic Party and its governorship candidate Olajide Adeniro, popularly known as Jandor, that Governor Sanwo-Olu did not have a WAEC school leaving certificate. The official, Adekombi Olaolu, who described himself as a lawyer from the legal department of WAEC, presented in evidence a document of a May-June O-level result bearing the names of the governor and issued in 1981. Ahead of the November 11 governorship election in Kogi State, a coalition of political groups from the All Progressives Congress are calling on their supporters to obtain their permanent voter cards so they can participate in the election. The leader of the group, Mr. Yakubu Adabenege, gave this charge in Lokoja, the state capital. Taraba State Governor Mr. Abu Kefas is considering a merger of ministries in the state civil service from 4 to 5 ministries to 20 to ensure effective training and results from civil servants across the state. According to the governor, this is necessitated by a need to streamline the various elements of the civil service for optimal service delivery and specialization and weed out ghost workers. Mr. Kefas said this in a meeting with permanent secretaries of various ministries in the state civil service. A faction of the Ohanese Youth Council led by Igboayaka, has berated the Uzodinma-led administration in Imo State over the spate of insecurity in Oguta local government area of the state. At a press conference in Owerri, the state capital, the group expressed dismay over the alleged inability of the state government to checkmate activities of non-state actors, even with the presence of the military, police and other security outfits. They noted that the situation has affected the socio-economic and other activities in the area for months. Meanwhile, in a swift reaction, another group under the aegis of Ohaneze Youth Week Worldwide has dissociated itself from the press briefing held by Igboayaka, describing him as an imposter and criminal impersonator. According to the group, the activities of Mr. Igboayaka is criminal and fraudulent and has been reported to the police in the state for necessary actions.
Thank you, everyone. There you have it. You've been served with your political roundup stories. Let's focus on our major stories today, and majorly some of the stories making the round in the country, top stories. That is, let's begin with the European Union Election Observation Mission to Nigeria as their report on the 2023 general election, which says that they've identified 6 areas of improvement in Nigeria's electoral process moving forward. The chief observer of the mission, Mr. Barry Andrews, gave a press conference today alongside some of his colleagues, and that in that presentation, they've prioritized or released a priority recommendation based on the observation of the general elections held on February 25th, March 18, and April 15. Some of the key areas listed by the mission are ambiguities in the law, the establishment of a publicly accountable process for the selection of INEC members, and ensuring real-time publication of and access to election results. Let me allow you to listen to the head of the EU Election Observer Mission to Nigeria.
In the lead-up to the 2023 general elections, Nigerian citizens demonstrated a clear commitment to the democratic process. That said, the election exposed enduring systemic weaknesses and therefore signal a need for further legal and operational reforms to enhance transparency, inclusiveness, and accountability. Positively, Nigeria has signed up to key regional and international commitments for democratic elections. While we consider the electoral legal framework provides an adequate foundation for the conduct of democratic elections, there are ambiguities in the law. For example, the Electoral Act 2022, which had its first test in a general election in 2023, and other legal instruments evidenced gaps in terms of transparency, accountability, and inclusivity, and left room for uncertain implementation. For that reason, we recommend, and this is our first priority recommendation, to protect the interests of voters through certainty of law for all stages and aspects of electoral processes by eliminating from electoral law and regulations errors and ambiguities to avoid potential for confusing interpretations and ensuring the revision processes are inclusive.
That's Barry Andrews, the head of the EU Election Observer Mission to Nigeria, their observation of the 2023 election. But INEC was present there. The National Commissioner of INEC on Voter Education and Publicity, Festus Okoye, spoke to journalists after the event. This is the reaction of INEC to EU's observation. Take a listen to Mr. Okoye.
Nigerians have commended the Commission for the introduction of the BVAS for purposes of voter accreditation. In terms of voter accreditation, nobody has faulted the functionality of the BVAS in all the elections we conducted. The only challenge this Commission has had is the issue of result upload for presidential election only. And I believe that it is not fair to judge the entire performance of the Commission on the basis of glitch in result upload for the presidential election. But we must also recognize the fact that the law itself has also given the political parties the opportunity to know what goes on at each polling unit. Almost all the political parties, or at least 5 of the political parties, nominated and got accredited over 170,000 polling agents. So what that means is that they had primary evidence of the results from the polling units. And it is those results from the polling units, together with the beavers as a machine itself, that goes to the collation center. So it is not true, and it cannot be correct for a political party to rely only on result upload in order to get the evidence with which he wants to prosecute his case in court.
Festus Okoye, INEC National Commissioner for Voter Education and Publicity. Let's get some insight into this. What the EU has submitted, its propriety, the validity and veracity of it, and what lessons for Nigeria. I mean, INEC has a stand. They've done their best. The tribunal is looking into it. There are those who are not happy with it, and across the country, there are those who have gone to the tribunal. Samson Itodo, Executive Director of Yega Africa, he joins us from Sierra Leone, where himself and some of his colleagues have gone to monitor and observe the election there. Thank you so much, Samson, for joining us tonight. But before I get into Nigeria's election, I know severally over the last election cycle, Sierra Leone has had their own election. We've had our election cycle just before theirs, and they've always had their elections after our own. But from what Sierra Leone did, I mean, Sierra Leone, a smaller country in terms of population and in fact of size, and their experience of democracy, maybe not as sophisticated as our own, and in terms of independence, so we might have some edge over them. But from their election, what lesson do you think it holds for Nigeria?
Well, thank you very much, Michelle. I think that the Sierra Leonean elections, has actually underscored the importance of public participation. About 83% turnout was recorded for this election. So if you compare that to Nigeria's less than 30% turnout, there's something we ought to learn from Sierra Leone, because citizens came out in their large numbers to cast their vote, because elections is a festival of democracy. So turnout is actually one thing. The fact that citizens believe in the process and they are able to show up to cast their votes, I think it's something that we need to learn, because the level of turnout for Nigeria's elections, it's not abysmally low, but very disappointing. And I think that that's one thing we can learn. The second critical thing, we can also learn from the Sierra Leonean election is the fact that on the day of election, there's no restriction of movement. And so people are able to move around, go about their daily affair, despite the context for which this election was conducted. It was conducted under intense political environment, but also an environment of polarization, deep polarization and mistrust. But just an hour ago, or less than an hour ago, the Electoral Commission has announced, the incumbent president, Madabio, as having secured 56%, of the vote. The major civil society organization, which conducted the PVT, has questioned the integrity of the elections, and that the official results are not a reflection of the ballot cast, because they fall out of the margin. Because based on the PVT data, no candidate will secure, the 55% required for returning a winner, and they had projected a rubbish. But it's shocking to everyone that the Electoral Commission has gone ahead to declare a winner. And I don't think it's a lesson that Nigeria should learn. And it just clearly tells you that politicians are determined on a consistent basis to continue to undermine, the electoral process just to secure votes at all costs.
Interesting. We're concerned. We're also looking at what is happening in Sierra Leone. But let's remove the log in our own eyes, and let's look at what is happening in our own country, Nigeria. The EU, I'm very certain that you are privy to the outcome of the EU's press briefing today. 6 areas they have identified. Give us your own view of what the EU has said today, INEC, as Mr. Okoye, immediately rebuffed what EU has said about the elections. What's your own view?
Well, I think it's important to note that the EU observer mission came on the invitation of the Nigerian government. And the Nigerian government invited the EU, and it's consistent with practice to come observe our elections. And they have this published a report. And I say this, that the report published by the EU are consistent with the observation of local civil society organizations, including other international organizations. It reflects our position, and they're quite consistent because they raised issues that citizens and civil society highlighted in the build-up, during, and in the post-election period. The operational challenges and shortcomings that were identified are consistent with what YAGA Africa and other civil society organizations have also highlighted in several statements that we have issued on the 2023 general elections. The report also highlighted the positives, because often when we audit, when we review elections, we always focus on the negative. But this report also underscores the fact that the new innovations introduced by INEC and reforms introduced by the 2022 Electoral Act did improve the process. However, there were several variables that impugn or cast a shadow of doubt on the credibility of the 2023 elections. And one of them is the independence of INEC. And the second priority recommendation was to the effect that the country needs to review the appointment procedure for national commissioners as well as resident electoral commissioners, because we're all witnesses to the electoral coup that occurred in Adamawa State during the last election. You could clearly see that there were individuals with partisan backgrounds who were appointed into INEC, and part of the recommendation is the appointment needs to be based on merit, it needs to be based on verified non-partisanship, and also based on competencies. Because INEC in a statement was clear that the resident electoral commissioner for Sokoto State was, incompetent in the way they managed the election. So that's one of the recommendations. So everything that is contained in that report, both the positives and the negatives, are a reflection, and they are consistent with the views of civil society and citizens. And they've gone ahead to make some recommendations. And this is not the first time that the EU, is releasing a report. And I say that the verdict of the EU on these elections is a welcome development.
So something, so one will have to look at a few issues here. There are those who are pro or anti-colonialism tendencies and who think that foreign influences on our democratic practices, and those who are of that school of thought who think that, the West need to allow growing democracies to breathe and allow them to also grow their own democracies in such a way that they're not breathing down on their necks. One of the concern here is the timing of the EU's report coinciding with what is happening in the courtroom. Is that sensitivity observed from what you think as a lawyer?
Well, Sheon, this is not the first time. It's consistent with practice. In 2007 till date, the EU have consistently been invited by the Nigerian government to come observe the elections. And why are we inviting, the international community? Because we are not a country that exists in isolation. These are our friends and our partners, and we engage, at different levels. So there's an existing bilateral, relationship. And Nigeria, has done what? Has not only domesticated, but ratified certain global as well as regional instruments like the Africa Charter on Democracy, Democracy, Elections and Governance, the ECOWAS Protocol. We are all signatories to this. And what this is what this really portends.
I'm asking my question based on the fact that there is a process. Just a moment, something. I'm asking the question based on the fact that there is a process. The election held, and there is a judicial process to review the election. And I thought that that could have been allowed to rest, or before the judicial process began, maybe EU would have come out with his own position. Not in the middle. I mean, if you hear some of the reactions that have trailed it, someone with are for and against, should the EU have come out in the middle of a judicial process? Isn't it sub judice?
Well, I don't think it's sub judice. It's just a report, on the conduct of the election with its recommendations. And it's just the same way we issue preliminary reports as well as final reports. Several civil society organizations have released their report on the election. I don't think, quite frankly, that the intention is to influence, the current cases being handled by the court. It's not in any way an attempt to interfere with that process. It's just part of the practice in the election observation ecosystem, that right after elections, a few weeks or months, you submit a report, and that's why the report contains recommendations that critical stakeholders like the legislature, like INEC, like civil society, can adopt to improve the credibility of our process. So in my view, there's absolutely nothing wrong with the timing. I think that it will not influence anyway. In any case, all the parties, especially at the presidential level, are about closing their cases. And so I don't think this, sort of impact on that.
So it takes me to yet another point in this conversation.
Actions that INEC and National Assembly will take.
Yeah, it takes me to yet another part of this conversation, which is the aspect of what the EU has identified and the pitfalls in the election. Two issues. From the EU stance, does it discredit the election and the outcome? Does it also show some kind of inconsistency in the manner and approach of the conduct of INEC for this exercise?
I'm not holding briefs for the EU, but having engaged with the EU and also engaged in elections at the global level, I don't think the intent of this report, is to assess and make a judgment as to the credibility, of our elections. The EU has a comprehensive framework for measuring and assessing election based on certain values and principles that a country, in our electoral law and our constitution, have set for ourselves. So I don't think the EU is making a judgment as to the credibility of the process. And Nigerians and INEC and the courts have a duty, to make that determination. And
yeah,
the matter is important.
But these are also, you can make influential, you can make an inference on what the EU has said. So, but I would like you to touch on.
Yeah. You made the second point, not just about the credibility, but about, loopholes identified. There's nothing new in this report that the EU has published. It is the same issues that we have highlighted, including you, Cheryl, in the course of your coverage of elections that you've identified as gaps within our electoral process. And for the purposes of deepening the integrity of our elections, we've got to undertake further reforms, that would help strengthen the credibility of our process. But the matter is already in court. We leave it to their lordships to make a determination. And if petitioners are dissatisfied, there are appeals procedure that have been established by our laws. And we wait for the Supreme Court and the other courts that have jurisdiction as a final arbiter to make a determination.
Yeah. Before I allow you to get some free dinner in Freetown where you are, if there's anything like that, because I understand that even in Freetown, there's no such thing as free in the market there. But finally, There are recommendations as to review of relevant electoral laws in Nigeria. We have a brand new electoral law 22. They've raised some question mark on the use of technology, appointment of key stakeholders and officials that are manning the process of our election. And you look at what INEC says it will also do, like INEC says it will begin a process of internal review and engaging stakeholders to look at that process. So if there is something that is critical for INEC to look into, and perhaps a legal framework review that we need to do, which aspect would you suggest that we should look into critically?
I think first you need to look at the Constitution. The process of appointing commissioners into INEC needs to be revisited. That's one. Two, this ambiguity as to the transmission of results needs to be addressed, because there are certain clauses in the law that are quite unclear, they are quite ambiguous, and they are inadequate. So things like results management, there's need for clarity in that regard. And I think the third critical thing, that also needs to be addressed with respect to our electoral legal framework, deals with, this point about electoral offenses prosecution. We have seen a high level of electoral impunity in the last election, either instrumentalization of voter suppression, fake news and hate messages. These are fundamental issues that we need to use our laws to fix. But we know this. You can have the best of the laws, but if our political class do not change their attitude towards politics and elections, it's not going to fix or regulate political behavior. And that's the biggest thing, that's the biggest challenge before us, because this new Electoral Act, to a large extent, is a good act. It's the best legal framework that we've had in recent past. But you still see how politicians went rogue in the 2023 elections, compromising INEC officials, intimidating voters, suppressing votes, and making it difficult, for people to exercise their franchise.
Samson Itodo, Executive Director, Yaga Africa, a lawyer, and is currently in Freetown. I might be able to get a free dinner, but I'm not sure if you will be able to get one in Freetown, monitoring, observing election in Sierra Leone. Thank you so much, Samson.
Nothing is free in this world.
Absolutely. Well, in some part of, because Salah is tomorrow, and some of my friends are already calling me for free Salah meat. So I'm going to get some free Salah meat. You may not be able to get that. So thank you so much, Samson.
I hope you keep mine.
You might not be able to meet some when you come back. Thank you so much, Samson. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah. Let me introduce you to my guest here in the studio. I have the governorship candidate of the SDP in the Rivers governorship election, a former federal lawmaker, Senator Magnus Ade, joins us live here in Abuja studio. Thank you so much indeed for joining us.
Thank you, Sharon. Thank you for having me here.
Have you had enough rest after the election?
I've just been at home.
I mean, let me get your reaction to the EU's position on our election. What do you make of their position?
Well, I think substantially, I believe that our electoral process in this country, we've done very well. I must say that. When I say that, a lot of times people are surprised. But the truth of the matter is that I have been part of elections in this country from 1999 and even before that, up till today. And I keep saying to people that the 2023 elections is actually the best election we've ever conducted in this country.
Really?
Yes.
Some people will say, I've had a guest on Sunday who said, this is a downer compared to what we had in 2015, and 2019 was a low, but this is, in fact, lower in terms of standards compared to 2019. If
you look at the participation of the parties, the participation of the people, the process itself, the laws under which the elections were conducted, these are massive improvements in what we've always done.
In what areas would you say?
First of all, in the law, in the use of technology, in the use of accreditation. The failures of the system, where the system was allowed to work, it worked very well. But actually, the truth of the matter, as your guest was saying just now, is that the conduct of politicians and key political stakeholders in undermining the process itself is actually the biggest problem that we face as far as elections are concerned. And even in the older democracies, election itself is always very much, how would I put it now? It's always very much work in progress. You continue to improve. As you see things that undermine or challenge the process or challenge the practices that you have, you take steps to correct them. So I think that as in every other election cycle, there is a lot for us to learn from the last elections. But in terms of the improvement of our electoral process, anybody who is objective would admit that the 2023 elections, the 2022 Electoral Act are very major leaps forward for the Federal Republic of Nigeria in terms of elections. So we can do it better. Even in terms of following the rules that we ourselves have set forth, we can improve. For example, you heard everybody talking about the way INEC picks the staff and those who actually conduct the elections. There is a process that is set out in the electoral system for picking this staff. People have to apply singly, online and all that. But this process at the end of the day can be subverted, as it was in several places, where those lists of those who applied independently is replaced by hand-picked people. So all these are things that are self-inflicted injuries on the electoral system.
Yeah, from your own point of view,
we can improve that.
The 2023 election was the best.
It's not just I'm telling you that I have followed elections in this country. I was a victim of a 2023 election, so I know the things that are wrong.
So you lost the election fairly?
No, I'm telling you that I know the things that are wrong with the elections. The things that are wrong with the elections is not the law or the process. So it is the fact that politicians refuse in several places and in several cases to respect the rules and the systems that have been put in place.
So in Rivers State, where you ran for governor, was the election free and fair there?
I have already said severally that it was not. The process...
So when you say the election was generally a good one, so it's an exception of Rivers State?
Listen, I have said before, and I want to repeat here, that wherever the process was allowed to work, this process that we have put in place for elections in this country is very, very good. It is a superb improvement on what we had before.
In Rivers State, did it work?
It didn't work in Rivers State.
Everybody knows Rivers was an exception of the...
Yes, because people made it not to work, because people didn't respect the rules. So where people respect the rules and play by the rules, we will have an outcome that will be pretty much acceptable to almost...
So were you rigged out in Rivers?
Sure, I have said clearly that for me, and I want to repeat that here, the election in Rivers State was an aberration. I even said that before the election, that there will be problem in Rivers State. And everybody knew that there will be problem. But you know, coming down here now, I'm not here to discuss Rivers State election. I'm talking about Nigeria and the Nigerian process as far as this election is concerned.
You know, Rivers is an element within the...
Yes, but even before the election in Rivers State, I told the whole world that everybody in Nigeria knew that Rivers State would be a problem, and it was.
So are you in courts to challenge the process?
No, I've withdrawn from the courts.
Why?
Why did I withdraw? There are several reasons why I withdrew.
Political exigency?
Political exigency and practical...
Chief of which is what?
Sorry?
Out of political exigency, as a chief of your reason is which one?
Well, Sean, you know that we have a new president, we have new hopes, we have a new atmosphere. And I do believe that as much as possible at this point, all of us should put hands together to see how we can move the country forward.
So are you still in SDP or you have moved to the APC?
I have not moved, but I went to the SDP primarily because of the Rivers State situation and the politics of Rivers State. As far as the national politics was concerned, I have always been where you know that I am. So let's leave that one and move forward.
A Tinubu man.
That's where I am.
Okay. We'll take a breather, and when we come back, the real reason why I invited Senator Magnus Abe, we'll be discussing it after this break. Join us again, everyone. Thank you so much, everyone. Welcome back to the conversation. Senator Magnus Abe, SDP governorship candidate in Rivers State and a former federal lawmaker who's been talking with us on the program. Thanks so much indeed.
Thank you, Shell.
Yeah, you said we are in a new era of renewed, of course. I mean, I always, the caveat is there that those who are unhappy with President Tinubu's victory and they've challenged, they've gone to court to challenge. We've seen a whole lot of issues being raised when they are calling the witness and the facts that are emerging from the examination in chief, which is the very first before we start seeing the defense from the other side. Now, the question is whether or not Bola Tinubu has the capacity to galvanize the Nigerian people, because there are those who voted for him and there are those who did not vote for him. So there is that division, but then there is a nation to govern. So the question is, does he have the capacity to be able to coalesce, to be able to bring Nigeria together and galvanize them?
Well, Sean, you know, like I said from the outset, of all those who indicated interest to run this country, nobody was better prepared, nobody has better experience, nobody has greater capacity.
Even Atiku Abubakar?
No, he doesn't have it.
Even Peter Obi?
Oh, Atiku Abubakar, with all due respect to him, when he himself was politically challenged, he ran to Tinubu. It was Tinubu who accommodated him, gave him a platform, supported him, sponsored him, and he ran. So this man has the capacity, the knowledge, and the reach to be able to bring diverse people together in this country. He has shown that repeatedly. And in this last election, if it was not for the fact that it was the Tinubu that was running, I doubt if we would have been able to, if the APC would have been able to do as much as it did with all the challenges, the currency change, everything that went on in this country. It was only Asiwaju who had the personal reach across this country to be able to bring together the kind of force that he brought about. This is the only politician in the history of this country that has been able to bring the conservative West into an alliance, the conservative North into an alliance with the progressive West, and uproot a sitting government, and then turn around to now bring himself back as the president of this country. Is, in terms of political strategy, engineering, dexterity, the ability to bring people together, I don't think you have a match in Asiwaju. That said, Seun, let me say this. During the inauguration, I said that Nigerians have a very low expectation of Tinubu, and it will be very, very easy for him to surpass that expectation. And events in less than 3 weeks have proved me right. A lot of people seem to be surprised that by the actions the president has taken, by his speed, by his understanding of the challenges of this country, by his courage, and by his determination to get this country to where he wants to take the country to. But those of us who knew him are not surprised. We knew that all this was possible with Tinubu at the helm. And that's why you see everywhere now people are turning, oh, his father. In fact, everybody now is singing one song that they didn't know that Asiwaju has the capacity to do the things he's doing. But we always knew that. And we told Nigerians...
But what has he done that you think that... and who are these people that are singing his song?
A lot of people. Very soon you sing it. But let me come,
no, I'm a journalist, I mean.
Let me come, Seun.
I don't sing anybody's song.
Let me come,
I just do my job as a journalist. That's it.
Don't worry, we'll get there. You say, who are these people and what has he done? Let me tell you something. Let's take simply the removal of this fuel subsidy, for instance. Every president that has come to office in this country has come with that understanding that the fuel scarcity, the fuel subsidy is a scam, it's destroying our economy, it's killing our country, it's subsidizing the entire West African sub-region, it's unsustainable, it will ruin us. They all said that, they all knew that. But no president was able to finally cross that line to say it ends now, whatever it is, without leaving the Eagle Square. Asiwaju achieved that for this country. That's something that, you know, people danced around for years and they couldn't do it. He's done it. So it may look simple because it has been done, but it was actually one of the most difficult challenges that this country has faced.
There are those who, in fact, believe that that was a political suicide, a governance misstep. That's a lot of people thought that maybe that was a knee-jerk approach. But the question is that if you hear from the statement released by the former President Muhammadu Buhari, it says some of these things were in the pipeline. And the reasons why it did not discharge some of these policy directions or decisions was not to hurt the Tinubu's ambition of becoming president. And is that, look, there are some of these, in fact, some of the bills, just for a moment, some of the bills that the president has signed, these are bills that have been prepared under the Buhari administration, signed and given to President Tinubu to sign. So there are those who will say, look, there isn't so much that has been done. It's going to be 1 month in the next 2 days.
First of all, Sean, I don't want to go into any kind of controversy with our former president. He's our father, and we must be respectful of him in our discussions. But I am not a spokesman for the Tinubu presidency. I'm just a Nigerian who is privileged to have been part of the politics of this country, and so I have a few things to say. If people were so concerned about helping Tinubu to win the election, one of the things that actually gave the greatest challenge both to the election and to the capacity of the APC to perform well in the election was the change of currency. That directly impacted the election. The question of oil subsidy removal could have been done any time within the past 8 years, and it would not have affected the elections at all. And it could have even been done after the elections, when the elections had already concluded. There was still a window to have done it then. It wasn't done. So I don't want to go into any kind of controversy about that. But what I want to say is that if somebody has done something, let us give the person the credit for the one he has achieved. Anybody who did his own will also get his own credit. So that's one. Yeah. When you talk about, say, bills had been prepared and signed, okay, if they had been signed, why were they still there for the incoming president to sign them again? So it is clear that these bills had not been signed.
No, I didn't say they had been signed. I said they were there because it was the Ninth Assembly that had prepared them. And these are the arguments that are being made by those who are critical of the Tinubu presidency, who have said, just a moment, Senator, that, look, in the last 1 month, you look at the effect and the implication of the policy decision of this government. They spent less than a month in office, and it has cost more expensive the kind of food that Nigerians are buying. They perhaps are now buying them 3 times the normal price. Their lives are perhaps harder than it used to be less than a month ago. They woke up and one day they just saw that their lives have taken a 360-degree turn. And for those who think now electricity tariff will now go up by some percentage, they are wondering what has happened to them. Those who voted will probably think, did they make a mistake?
Sure. Let me respond to some of these things that you're saying. First of all, money. The most critical thing about money is that you have it. It is not what things cost. If things cost 10 naira and you don't have 10 naira, you're out of the demand for that particular product. People are buying airplanes that cost $300 million because they have $300 million. Nigerians are leaving Nigeria to go to London, to go to America, where fuel is costing $4 a gallon, $3 a gallon. It is not fuel they are going to look for. They are looking for opportunities to make money. So even though fuel is more expensive, things may be more expensive, but the opportunities are wider. The capacity of immediately, as they get there, they start making money.
Are you sure that those opportunities are immediate?
I'm coming, sir. But that economy provides opportunity for people to be able to achieve an actual. That's why everybody is going there. In fact, the other day, there was a joke that somebody posted on the internet that, if the British and the Americans were to come back now with slave ships to come and carry slaves from Nigeria, that volunteers, Nigerian volunteers, will fill the ships by themselves. And somebody wrote under that, in fact, he will come with his own chain. He doesn't want to get there and hear that chains are finished so they cannot carry him. That's how much people want to go to where there's opportunity. What the president is trying to do is to create opportunities in Nigeria for Nigerians to be able to make money and expand their own capacity to improve their lives. So yes, the price of fuel may go up, but it will also come down. Today, fuel is being imported by only NNPC. NNPC is an unwealthy organization that is totally, would I say, it is a government propped up organization that is inefficient. If today Seun Ogunbaloye and Sons decides to import fuel and is given the license and the finances to import, you don't have the same overhead with NNPC. So your own may probably be cheaper than theirs. So these things, these policies have just come in place. They are going to expand opportunities for Nigerians. People will be able to make money.
Senator,
now look at the single forex window, for example. If you look at the single forex window, what has it done? Today, some people were in my house. They brought me some documents. These are people who tried to import foreign exchange into Nigeria for almost 2 years. They've not been able to get their money out of the CBN. What happens? They bring money in, CBN grabs their money, gives it to you at 450 naira or some ridiculous rate, and then they turn around, give it to some favored person at the same rate. The person takes your money, cross over the street to the parallel market.
Has been happening?
That's what was happening in this country.
Really?
Yes, everybody knows it now.
That the CBN gives out money to some of their
preferred people, yes. It's been on the front page of the papers where they say, the other day, one of the papers carried it, that they gave how many bureau de change licenses to some people, and they were giving. Is it
part of the reasons why Mr. Emefiele was arrested?
I didn't arrest Mr. Emefiele, and I cannot come on national television to give reasons why Mr. Emefiele was arrested. But the other day I was in church, and the bishop of the Methodist Church in my place was saying that one of the things that he is now supporting President Tinubu for is the arrest of Emefiele because of what he went through, and everybody should pray for Tinubu and pray that Emefiele remains in jail. He said so. So people saw all these things, that it wasn't helping the economy.
Senator, right? Yeah. You think Tinubu means well for Nigeria, right?
It's not that I think, I know. I know that he means well, and I know that our economy, by the grace of God, is going to expand in ways that Nigerians will be amazed at the opportunities that will be open to people in this country. I know, it's not that I think.
His policies may have immediate impact, and pains might be felt, is it?
Yeah, because these are things that you have to, first of all, put in the policy. So the pains will come as soon as the policy is changed. But in that same change of policy, there will be opportunities. And as people begin to take advantage of those opportunities offered by the change in policy, then the benefits will begin to accrue to Nigerians.
Senator, we'll anchor on this scenario that I will paint. You know, you're a big man. You may not be able to feel what some of us who are very low in the ladder, in the social ladder, are facing. Let me give you an example. A Nigerian citizen who earns 100,000 naira per month, he feeds with about 20,000 naira, out of it remaining 80,000. It takes transportation with another 20,000. It remains for him 60,000. He saves up 20,000. He gives his children and family another 20,000 for daily living. Do you know what has happened recently? Sure. Just for a moment, sir. That feeding money is doubled or more. So he will have to pay about 40,000 or more for feeding, about 40,000 or more for transportation. He has less than 20,000 naira for the rest of the thing. How do you explain to this person that Tinubu means well for him?
Sure, that's the point I'm trying to make. You are focusing on the fact that this man has 100,000. This man has 100,000. There is no opportunity in this economy.
I'm focusing on the fact that the average the common man is feeling the pain, maybe more than you, the big man.
I'm coming, sir. What I'm saying is this, that progress, prosperity, is not just about what things cost. It is about the ability of the average person to make more money. And in this Nigeria, outside of stealing or criminality, there is no opportunity for that man who is making 100,000 to be able to improve on that his 100,000. So he's stuck in a given place. He has no hope. He is despondent. That's why he wants to leave to a place where he can have opportunity. what the policies of this president is going to do is that it is going to expand the opportunity for the average Nigerians. So that man that is making 100,000, when these policies begin to percolate into the economy, he will have an opportunity to now be making 200,000. So he will actually be better off.
We do
so
hope
what this whole thing is about creating opportunities for the Nigerian people.
We do hope
and
that
even in the downstream sector, opportunities will expand. More people will get in, more people will make more money. That's what the whole thing is about, making money. And Tinubu understands money.
We hope that all of this will pan out well for the average Nigerians. Thank you so much.
Let's work and support it. It will work out.
Senator Magnus Abe, a former federal lawmaker, governorship candidate of the SDP in Rivers State in the 2023 governorship election. Thank you so much. It's always a pleasure having you around.
Thank you, Sean.
Thank you so much.
I'm glad to be here.
That's our show for tonight, everyone. I'll see you tomorrow again at 7 p.m. Bye-bye.